Hey, good morning, it's Owen, Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, let's move on to chapter 4 of my new book, Along for the Ride. Available now on Amazon. If you haven't bought the book, please do. Thanks for everyone who has bought the book so far and the nice reviews that I've been getting on Amazon. Let's move on to chapter 4 now, which is your next move. And if hopefully you've read the first 3 chapters, which was winning the mental game of becoming an investor as opposed to a speculator. You've bought your principal residence, you're working now, you're putting some money away into your RRSP and taking advantage of that tax deduction. Hopefully you've also opened up a TFSA and putting a little bit of money into that TFSA. So now you're at the next step in your life here. You're thinking, how can I diversify my stock portfolio, my RRSPs and my TFSAs, and start creating what this whole book is about, is start creating that passive income machine. Start investing in things, stocks that pay you a dividend, and investment real estate, where I'm going to start collecting some passive income or rent checks from my tenant. So in chapter 4, I talk about the next step. You own your principal residence. Now you want to buy an investment property. So buying an investment property, as you're going to find out, is a lot more difficult than buying your principal residence. When you go down to talk to your mortgage professional at your bank or a mortgage broker, you're going to need a lot more, there's going to be a lot more scrutiny to be able to qualify for that mortgage. The first thing is you're going to need a minimum of 20% down. Now, in this chapter, I'll go through some of the creative ways of trying to come up with some of that money, that 20% down you're going to need. And there's lots of ways you can do it. The first step always, though, is to talk to your lender. Talk to your bank who holds your current mortgage. See what kind of equity you've got built up in there, because you will be able to tap into some of that. You're not going to be able to tap into anywhere near 100%, but if you've got $100,000 of clear equity built into that property, your bank or your lender might allow you to tap into about half of that at a fairly favorable interest rate, probably prime plus 0.25%. But I'll also talk in this chapter about some other creative ways of getting your first investment property. That could mean going in with a partner. And if you do that, I'll talk about how important it is to get a co-ownership agreement. So there's a number of ways you can go about it. I'll also talk a little bit about avoid these for sale by owner type schemes or no money down schemes. I blogged about this last winter. Every 3 or 4 months you'll see these seminars roll into Vancouver about buying properties with no money down and flipping them, or buying properties through for sale by owners. It's a joke. Stay away from it. In my book, I'll go through some detail on that. The other thing I'll talk about is when you do decide to buy a second property, in some cases people will take their home that they've originally bought, that is now their principal residence, and they will convert that into an investment property and buy a new property as their principal residence. That's the way I did it when I started out. Now when you do that, it's so important that you adjust your capital cost base on your current principal residence. And it's vitally important you do that and do it the proper way. Get an appraisal done on it. Also, you could get someone like me, a realtor, to do an assessment on your current property to give it current market value. That way you adjust your cost base on it. If you're up $100,000 on it, you paid $300 for the unit, now it's worth $4. Now when you turn it into an investment property, the cost base is adjusted to $400,000. So 15 or 20 years from now, if you do sell the property, that first $100,000 will be tax-free to you because it was your principal residence. So it's important to do that. The other thing I'll talk about on this is how to screen a tenant, how to avoid a lot of headaches. The number one thing that I see from people that call me and say, "Oh, and I want you to sell my investment unit," it's always the same thing. They've had some bad tenants in there and it's just too much work, and I want to get rid of the thing. And that should never happen. If you take the advice and the direction that I give you in my book, you shouldn't have a lot of tenancy turnover and the headaches. But I feel for people. I've sold properties with clients that have had pretty bad horror stories, but a lot of it could be avoided if they simply took some precautions and some steps that I recommend in my book. For instance, always get a credit check. and get a beacon score on that potential tenant. So many part-time landlords don't do this, and it's a little bit of work. You have to apply to be able to run credit checks, and there's some work and some paperwork involved, but you want to do that. You also want to properly screen your tenants, get an application form filled out with referrals, job history, and then check up on those. Don't just take their word for it. So I'll give you some details on how to properly screen and look for tenants so you don't have a lot of tenancy turnover. So that's chapter 4 in my book. The next step in getting you're moving up the property ladder there, going from a principal residence and now buying an investment unit to start creating some more passive income flows. Thanks for watching. As always, stay tuned. Next month I'll do an overview of chapter 5. As always, if you haven't joined my YouTube blog or subscribed, please do. I'm Owen Bigland. I'll see you next week.